Good morning, everybody. I'm Dr. Satisha, scientist, ICAR-CIBA. Today, 5th June, is considered as World Environment Day, and on this occasion, today we are organizing a digital talk by Dr. Himanshu Pathak, Director of Deemed Institute of ICAR, National Institute of Abatic Stress Management, Baramati. So, as everyone knows, the importance of Environment Day, and due to the present situation, people are facing the difficulties because of this pandemic, the problem people are facing. So the online mode, we have been accustomed more than a year now. Even last year, Environment Day also was celebrated online mode. So a new way of life has this pandemic has shown, and adjusting to the situation, we are moving ahead with the hope better future by tomorrow. So from the institute ICAR-CIBA, being a aquaculture institute, this environment, health of this environment is much significant as for our human life or even any other life. So today I call upon Dr. I wish to inform Dr. KP Jitendran, our Director, ICAR-CIBA, and presence of Dr. Pathak, Director, National Institute of Abatic Stress Management, and Dr. Muralidhar, Scientist in Charge, Environment Section, and my colleagues. So with the with the beginning of this program, I just wish to have a small word about this World Environment Day that is on 5th June, that has been announced by United Nations as a vehicle for encouraging awareness and action for protection of the environment. The program was initiated in 1974, and every year this program has been initiated. So I request Dr. Muralidhar, Scientist in Charge, Environment Section, AHED, to welcome our guests and all the dignitaries, and also give a brief introduction about this Environment Day on its importance and the way ahead. Sir, Murali sir.
Good morning and welcome everyone to the celebration of World Environment Day on LinkedIn platform by ICAR and the Institute of Aquaculture Chennai. As we all know, World Environment Day is the United Nations National Day and takes place every year on 5th June since 1974. The main objective of the World Environment Day is to spread worldwide awareness of the preservation and the protection of the environment in over 150 countries. This year, World Environment Day is hosted by Pakistan and is coinciding with the start of UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration. And it is intended to massively scale up the restoration of depleted and destroyed ecosystems to fight the climate crisis and enhance food security, water supply, and biodiversity. This timeline also overlaps with the UN Decade of Action to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. So, in this direction, ICAR-CIBA has taken the pledge to completely ban the use of plastic in the last 3 years, and also we are conducting the environment impact assessment and the monitoring program regularly to by the institute to address the pollution aspects into the water body and the ecosystem from the relation to the aquaculture point of view. ICAR-CIBA is celebrating this day every year, and this is the second year of celebrating virtually due to the present COVID situation. Every year, we wish to celebrate this year with an invited speaker of eminence. On this occasion, this year, we have requested respected Dr. Himanshu Pathak, Director of Deemed Institute of ICAR, National Institute of Abatic Stress Management, Baramati, Maharashtra, to deliver a talk. Sir, We know how busy you are, and thank you very much for accepting our invitation at a short notice. And it is my privilege to welcome you on behalf of ICAR for this day celebration of World Environment Day. It is my pleasure to welcome Dr. K.P. Jitendran and Director CIBA. Though he took charge very recently from the first of this month onwards, but encouraged us to organize this meeting, particularly in the present situation of the second wave of COVID. I also welcome the HODs, IT teachers, ITs, research scholars, and staff of CIBA to the celebration of World Environment Day. We also have faculty members and the students and scholars from other research institutes, colleges, and Christian universities. And I take this opportunity to welcome you all this day of World celebration of the World Environment Day on the digital platform. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So indeed, this Environment Day has to be remembered every day, and not only on June 5th, what I meant. So continuing this program, I requested Dr. K.P. Jitendran, Director, CIBA, to give his presidential address.
Okay, thank you, Sadisha. Chief guest of today's function, Dr. Himanshu Pathak, Sarji, and Director, National Institute of Biotic Stress Management, Baramati. Dr. Muralidhar, SIC of our Environment Section, colleagues, friends, and students. A very good morning to all of you. We are celebrating this World Environment Day today to basically to create awareness on environmental issues and to take action for the protection of the environment and to remind people that the nature should not be taken for granted. It has been a platform for raising issues related to pollution, biodiversity, human population explosion, global warming, wildlife protection, and forest conservation, and most importantly, the sustainable and judicious use of natural resources. Of course, as mentioned by Sadisha in the introductory part, this is the second time we are celebrating this day on digital platform as a modest function during the COVID pandemic season, and especially during the lockdown period. Last year also it was a lockdown period. This year also is again a lockdown period in many parts of the country. As you know, this year's theme is of this World Environment Day 2021 is centered around the 3 R's: reimagine, recreate, restore. As this year mark the beginning of United Nations decade of ecosystem restoration. Ecosystem restoration for us, for a common people like us, it is covered with some activities most of the time. Is the planting of trees, greening cities, rewilding our gardens, cleaning up rivers, beaches, and so on. And of course, often the related aspect is coming nearly around pollutions. The ban on single-use plastics, reduction in usage of chlorofluorocarbon elements, etc., could also go a long way in saving our environment. It is crucial to keep our resources clean. And the basic principle of, again, another 3 R's is reduce the usage, recycle the products, reuse the available resources. It is again important to note that biodiversity preservation can go hand in hand with effective climate change mitigation and adaptation efforts. The emergence of COVID, as well as some of the emerging diseases like Nipah, reminded us just how disastrous the consequence of ecosystem loss is, and the destruction of animals' natural habitat creates ideal condition for pathogen such as coronavirus and Nipah to spread among the human population. Coming back to our sector, aquaculture in particular, we all know that the aquaculture industry is in a rapid pace of expansion to fulfill the shortfall between the production of seafood and the decreasing availability of natural catches from marine ecosystem. This is mainly due to the overexploitation and collapse of several fisheries around the world. It's also one of the most environmentally efficient ways of producing low-cost animal protein. In many parts of the world, aquaculture has been developed mainly by converting the mangrove areas, wetlands, and salt pans, and marshy lands. However, our studies in our country reveal that this conversion of mangrove has been minimal in our country at least. And in our attempt to mitigate the ecological effects of aquaculture activities in estuaries, technological approaches like IMTA and improving the nutrient assimilation and discharge water treatment has to be addressed. Another restorative element in aquaculture would be to control the veterinary medicine, which has been leaching out into the water bodies and causing the contamination in natural water bodies. And this lead to the antimicrobial resistance, antibiotic resistance among the aquatic bacteria. In addition to this, we need to address the issues related to effluent releases and to causing the environmental degradation. Another area is disease management, especially this emerging exotic diseases, which is coming through the water bodies in our natural ecosystem. And management practices focusing on the high risk diseases to be monitored. And we need to develop some contingency planning for all these things. And we also should recall that save environment and save earth. I'll conclude here with, as we have another program immediately after this function, I don't want to cut short the time from my side. And I wish a very happy Environment Day. You listen to our today's guest speaker, Dr. Pathak, on his elegant talk on economy or environment, solving the eternal conflict. Thank you, one and all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Indeed, as you have said, for aquaculture, environment is much more significant because, as everyone knows, water is a universal solvent. Whatever pollution or any kind of salts or any chemicals is added, water is the recipient, and aquaculture without water is not possible. So finally, the aquaculture sector is getting affected. So it's, of course, a sustainable model has to be developed, and we should entrust the scientific development in by considering this Environment Day as well, to develop a better sustainable aquaculture practices in the coming days. So continuing this program, we have Dr. Himanshu Pathak. So before he begins the program, I just want to give a brief introduction, though it's much bigger. We have cut shorted the most prominent what I can say. So sir is having about or even more than 30 years of experience with the specialization in soil science, climate change, and abiotic stress management. Prior to the present position as a director in the deemed Institute of National Institute of Abiotic Stress Management in Baramati, sir was serving as director in ICAR National Rice Research Institute in Cuttack for a 5 years period from 2016 to 20. So he was co-facilitator of Rice Wheat Consortium, International Rice Research Institute, IRRI Indian branch in New Delhi during the period of 2006 to 9, and Institute of Meteorology and Climate Change, Climate Research in Germany during the period of 2004 to 6. And he is a visiting scientist to IRRI in the Philippines, that's the International Rice Research Institute, and also CSIRO Land and Water in Australia. So he is a prominent figure, not only nationally, even internationally, and have been kept himself very busy for, we can see almost for like 2 decades. And coming to his professional background, he has postgraduate and doctorate degree in soil science and agriculture chemistry from ICAR-CIBA, Delhi, and a postdoctorate experience from University of Essex in the UK as a Boys Cast fellow during the period of 1996 to 97. And again, another postdoc from Institute of Meteorology and Climate Research in Germany as a Humboldt fellow during the 2004 to 5. Sir is having a very strong presence in the publication with more than 200 peer-reviewed research articles, 31 review papers, 27 popular articles, 12 books, 22 technical bulletin, and 75 chapters, book chapters. So he has participated in several symposia or conferences in many countries, about 27 or more, and he has guided MSc and PhD students as well during his scientific career. He has also been editor of several peer-reviewed international and also national journals. He is a fellow of many scientific academies. Maybe the most prominent we can list out are NAS and West Bengal Academy of Science and Technology, Indian National Science Academy, in short it's called INSA, National Academy of Science, Indian Climate Congress in Bhubaneswar, and many more. He has recognized with many international awards as well, as Alexander von Humboldt Fellowship of Germany, then lead author of Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, that's IPCC, fifth assessment report. He is a lead author in the refinement of this IPCC guidelines for national greenhouse gas inventories, then a coordinator for United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, Ministry of Agriculture and Farm Welfare, Government of India, and Outstanding Administrative Support Award, IRRA, Philippines. He was also recipient of many national awards. Few prominent ones may be listed as the Rafi Ahmad Kidwai Award of ICR, then the Platinum Jubilee Award Lecture of ISCA, and Krishi Gaurav Award of Orissa Krishak Samaj, Silver Jubilee Commemoration Medal of INSA, Society of Agriculture Professional Excellence Award, Professor S.K. Mukherjee Commemoration Award, and Dr. B.C. Dev Memorial Award of ISCA. He served as a president of professional societies such as Association of Rice Research Workers, Cuttack, Odisha, Society for Conservation of Nature, New Delhi, and Agriculture and Forestry Sciences section of ISCA. He is a member of policy framing bodies of several organizations, and maybe a few of them as a chairman, Global Technology Watch Group Sustainable Agriculture of TIFAC, New Delhi, in the year 2018. Then chairman, Controlled Release of Fertilizers in India. Then a member of formation of India's New Science, Technology and Innovation Policy, Government of India. Member in Scented Rice Program by DBT of Government of India. Then a member, National Program on Carbon Sequestration Research in New Delhi. Then also member in CSA Technology Identification and Prioritization. So this very brief background about Dr. Pathak, who has been well known in the agriculture sector for more than 3 decades. And with this vast experience, we have invited Sir for giving his, based on his experience, on today's digital talk, this economy or environment, solving the eternal conflict. So this is a very big question and complicated as well. So we hope we can hear some few words or means some information that's very interesting by Dr. Pathak with his own experience in this sector. Sir, desk is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Satisha, Dr. Jitendran, Dr. Murali, Dr. Nagarajan, Dr. Kumaraja, all the scientists of CIBA, faculty members of other ICAR institutes and universities. And as I was told, some students have also joined today's program. So all my dear students, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, let me wish all of you a very happy World Environment Day, and I congratulate all of you, particularly CIBA and its director, for celebrating this day, of course, on digital mode, but even then that shows the spirit of our environmental law. Friends, I will be sharing today about, as Dr. Satisha said, this eternal question of conflict between economy and environment. Of course, it is complex, but I'm not going to tell anything about the complexity of those things. So those who have joined, they can be rest assured that in next 30 or 35 minutes, we will be discussing very, very simple things. So you can simply enjoy nothing to torture your brain or your emotion with this one. It is very, very simple. Of course, the conflict is not very new, it is very old one. And of course, as Dr. Jitendran also said, that from today, we are also going to celebrate a decade of ecosystem restoration. And this year, these 3 R's, reimagine, recreate, restore, these are the buzzwords for ecosystem restoration by United Nations. Now, this is the question of either economy or environment. And this is not a question of today. Since the beginning of the whole civilization, when this caveman who was gathering his foods or hunting all around the jungles, but then probably getting tired of hunting and gathering, he thought of settling somewhere. And then he thought of growing crops, rearing animals, of course, fishing and so on. Since that day, this question of economy or environment, which one or both, has been struggling in the mind of all intellectuals. And of course, from these cavemen, today we have reached to what we call as modern day of 2021. Now, before I proceed, let me very briefly distinguish what these two approaches are, economy or environment. In the prioritical approach, the economists feel that economy should be given priority over environment. But environmentalists think the other way. They think environment should be given priority over economy. In terms of growth, economists feel it should be maximized to the possible. Environmentalists say, no, it should be steady state, not to maximize. In terms of technology, economists feel that it should be unalloyed good till we are getting benefit in terms of more profit, more income. We should go on exploiting it. But environmentalists say, no, technology is good, but not always. Think twice. For example, in case of fertilizer, economists say, go on applying as much of fertilizer as possible till you get more profit. But environmentalists say, no, may not be that good in a long term. So we can also go for organic. In economics, it is neoclassical economy, but in environment, it is classical. In beliefs, economists feel unorthodox, but environmentalists generally they are perceived as orthodox. And of course, whenever a crisis comes, economics or modern men feel, what crisis? Let any crisis come, we will be able to solve it with technology, with our knowledge. But environmentalists feel, no, everything cannot be solved. There could be crisis of the system. So these are the two broad differences. And most of the time, environment is in minority and at times marginalized. And over the decades, economists have really triumphed, really won this particular debate of economy or environment. Let me very briefly present before you what have been the developments in economy and agriculture. What have we achieved so far in terms of economy, in agriculture, and of course, then what has happened to the environment. In terms of agricultural production, we have really done a very fantastic and fabulous job. If we compare our production of various commodities, which was in 1950-51 to that of today, 2021, you will find that for food grain, vegetable, fruit, milk, egg, fish, the increase has been 6 to 50 times. And this year we had record amount of food grain production of 305 million tons. Again, in terms of fish production and aquaculture production, it has been a record for the last few years. Even during COVID situation, my friends, agriculture sector performed well. Almost all other sectors did very bad, very, very bad, but agriculture still sustained, and probably because of good performance of agriculture, we could, to the extent possible, survive this COVID pandemic. This increase in food production is not only limited to India, it is almost widespread. All over the world, food grain production for the last 50 or 40 years have increased. As we know that agriculture started roughly around 10,000 years back. Initially, it was subsistence agriculture of low productivity agriculture, but in last 5 decades, agriculture all over the globe has made very significant progress. And as in India, we are really very, very happy with the progress. In India, we were in food shortage till 1970s. We used to beg food. We used to live in sieve to mouth, as all of you know. But then from 1970 to 2010, we became almost sufficient in food production. So from food shortage, we became food sufficient. And then 2010 onwards, we are in a way food surplus. We are exporting food. For example, this year, we have exported around 18 million tons of rice alone. If we include all other commodities, including aquaculture, this is going to be a very large number. So we not only had green revolution, we had white revolution, blue revolution, yellow revolution, golden revolution, silver revolution, brown revolution, gray revolution, and my student friends can certainly go and look for the meaning of all these revolutions. So we can say we really had a kind of rainbow revolution in almost all the sectors of agriculture, be it crop, be it animal husbandry, be it poultry, or be it fisheries or aquaculture. If you see in terms of Indian economy over the years, Indian economy has grown about 90 times since 1950. Our per capita gross domestic product has grown by around 7 times. And for agriculture growth or economic growth since 1990, we are having around 5% growth annually. So we really had a very illustrious economic past. But the question is, can it be extrapolated into a promising future? That is a very big question. Not only India, the world economy has also flourished. It also had a very bright past. But again, the question is, can we have a bright future? Global economy has grown by around 10-fold. Economists project around 3% annual growth for last 5 decades. But again, as I said, the question is, can it promise a bright economic future for the whole world? Not only economy is growing, but the consumption pattern is also shifting. As you can see, our consumption of egg, meat, or even other products, including beef, pork, chicken, and the products which use more amount of water, which use more amount of nutrient, which use more amount of energy, we are preferring more of those kinds of foods. So that means we are exploiting the natural resources more and more to fulfill the demand of our food habit. Now, this is a very interesting analysis some people did, that our diet has also been shrinking, or it is becoming more or less similar all over the world. For example, in 1960, you can see these dots all spread around. That means people used to consume diverse kind of foods, very diverse kind of food. But then when starting from 2000, and probably these numbers has been a little bit more over here, we are having only limited number of foods, limited, and which is becoming more or less similar. Today, many Indians consume food which is almost similar to the food of European or American. And similarly, many of our Indian foods have also grown out, and we are simply living our traditional so many kinds of foods, including millets and other minor products. So in gist, if we have to see, that the food production is increasing, no doubt. Food habit is also changing. And of course, economy is rising. So these are the things which have been happening in last 40, 50 years. But the question is, what about the environment? What is the status and trend of environment? Let me show you some of the important observations. Water, the most crucial thing for any civilization, for any life. In India, water availability is reducing. In 1950, per capita water availability was more than 5,000 meter cube. But then when we reached around 2010, it was around 1700 millimeter. And then now it is even further lower. You know, whenever per capita water availability is 1700 meter cube or less, we call it water stress. And if it goes below 1000 meter cube, then we call it water scarce. That means you can see that India has already become water scarce, and it is going towards becoming, water stress, it is going to become water scarce in near future. This is the aquifers which are depleting very severely. And these particular one shows, each dot shows how many electric pumps or diesel pumps are operating in a particular area. And the concentration, the population of electric pumps and diesel pumps will tell you how extensively we are exploiting our aquifers. We are going deeper and deeper, creating a very long-term and severe problem. Coming to fertilizer application, all of you know that fertilizer is a major driver of food production, not only in India, but also globally. It has got almost 1:1 relationship. If you do not apply fertilizer, probably you will not be able to harvest the quantity of product which you are harvesting today, be it rice, wheat, or any other crop. But the efficiency of this fertilizer is very low. For nitrogen, it is only maximum 40%, phosphorus 20%, potassium little more, 60%, but for micronutrients, very, very less. That means the one which you are applying is not being used by the crop or by humans or animals. Much of it is being lost. It is going to the environment, polluting soil, polluting water, polluting atmosphere, and so on. Just let me give you a very simple analysis to understand what kind of losses we are making. For example, if we produce 100 kg nitrogen fertilizer, say urea, in a factory. So we produce 100 kg urea nitrogen in a factory. What we apply is only 94 kg. What goes into the crop, including grain as well as straw, is only 47 kg. Only 31, that is 31%, around 30-35% is taken up by the crop. So that's what we are producing. Out of 100, crop is only taking 30-35%. But then what we are consuming is far less. Out of this 31% harvested by the crop, we consume only 14%. So out of 100 kg produced in a factory, humans, we consume only 14 kg, only 14%. And that too, if you are a vegetarian. If you are a vegetarian, you consume 14%, 86% is lost. But if you are a non-vegetarian, then you consume only 4%. 96% is lost. Therefore, you can imagine the quantity of loss of fertilizer, which we are making with every application. And that is the reason, if you see the global map, India and many other countries are in red. That means we are applying very large amount of fertilizer, which is not being used by crop, not is going to human mouth, and it is polluting the environment. Again, another global map, which shows the ammonia concentration in the atmosphere. And you will see, unfortunately, that the atmosphere of India and also some parts of China over here and 1 or 2 points in USA, it is red. Red means the atmosphere of these places are highly concentrated with ammonia. And most of it comes from application of nitrogenous fertilizer. As a result, all the water bodies, or most of the water bodies, are polluted. And your institute is, of course, working on aquaculture, so you know much more about this pollution of all these water bodies. Accordingly, we are also having depletion of nutrients, and the number of deficiency of various nutrients are increasing year after year. Initially, it was only nitrogen, then several nutrients went on adding, which we are finding deficient and deficient. Another problem is, of course, soil erosion, expanding desert, and of course, associated with this is increasing number of hungry and starving people. Overplying, overgrazing, climate change, deforestation are making soil vulnerable to wind and water erosion. Because of that, we are losing topsoil, which is the most fertile soil, and therefore its food producing ability of that particular soil is getting reduced and reduced. As a result, many countries, and the numbers are increasing day by day, these countries have failed in providing sufficient food to its people. Again, as you know, the population is increasing, therefore the area per person, cultivated area or total area per person, is also decreasing year by year. In 1960, it was 1 hectare to feed 2 persons. In 1995, it became 1 hectare to feed 4 persons. And in 2025, very near, we are going to have only 1 hectare to feed 5 persons. So all these problems and complexities are coming. Along with this, various biotic stresses, including insect and diseases, are also increasing. This is just an example of rice. You know, in 1943, at the few years before of our independence, was only one disease, but today you can see so many diseases. Again, it was very few insects earlier, but now so many insects which are becoming a major pest. This is just an example of rice, but probably you can have similar examples for all other crops, including animal and also fisheries. And to control that, we are applying more and more amount of pesticides. In 2018, India pesticide market was worth around 197 billion rupees, and the projection is it is going to increase at a rate of 8.1% till 24-25. And of course, future probably we do not know, and we have got around 292 registered pesticides in this country. And of course, climate change, we talk about it all the time. Very, very alarming problem. Carbon dioxide concentration has already increased up to 415 parts per million. Mean temperature increased by around 1 degree centigrade. All the 6 warmest years from 2015 to last year were just these years. Seasons are shifting, rainfall variability and intensity increasing, glaciers retreating, sea level rising, and of course, as I said, new insect and diseases are also emerging. And unfortunately, as the projections goes, that all these extreme events, whether it is cyclone, heavy rain, heat wave, flood or drought, these are going to intensive, going to become more in number. And very recently, within this year itself, we have faced 2 very severe cyclones. One is, of course, Taute and the Yes. Projection is that the temperature may increase up to 4.8 degrees centigrade by the end of this century. Sea level may rise up to 50 centimeter. And of course, along with that, several biotic stresses and abiotic stresses are also going to intensify. We are losing biodiversity, as Dr. Jitendran also talked about, that the Global Living Planet Index has declined by more than 30% since 1970, and all other parameters show that the biodiversity is really in trouble. Of course, impacts of aquaculture also having its own very positive effects, but also negative effects on the coastal ecosystem. It is changing the habitat and also losing it, changing on sediment and water column dynamics and processes, and of course, finally changes the biodiversity and food webs. So all of these things are happening because of intensive aquaculture. These are also putting threats to coastal ecosystems. You talk about estuaries, mangroves, coral reef, sandy beaches, and of course, seagrass or seaweed. All of these are facing very severe threats. Threats of habitat destruction, pollution, unsustainable resource exploitation, and of course, harmful algal blooms or alien species, and global warming. So each and every ecosystem, all of these 4 or 5 are getting impacted or threatened by these changes. And of course, we also know that blue economy versus healthy ocean. Healthy ocean has got several ecosystem services, several benefits, but these services are also being threatened, being challenged because of environmental degradation. Not only this, all of this putting together, rather, the food prices are also soaring globally. Initially, at one point of time, it was coming down, but then it increased, again came down, but again for last few years, it has started increasing. So price of food is soaring. Number of hungry people globally. Initially, it was decreasing, and people were really very, very happy to see that the number of hungry people are getting down and down. But for last few years, it has started increasing again. Globally, there were almost 40 million more undernourished people now than which was in 2014. And of course, as all of you know, that the COVID situation has increased the number of hungry people many folds in almost every part of the world, particularly the developing world. And in terms of global hunger index of 2020, India ranks 94th among 107 countries. So our performance in this front is really very, very poor. Globally, it is having a very, very significant and dire consequences. There was a study on assessing planetary boundaries, and they identified 9 planetary boundaries. And what they observed that out of these 9 boundaries, we have already crossed 3 boundaries. Crossing the boundaries means you are now going through a difficult time, you are going to collapse. So 3 boundaries which you have already crossed are climate change, nitrogen cycle, and biodiversity loss. And 2 more planetary boundaries, phosphorus cycle and ocean acidification, we are about to cross in next few years. So that means we are really living on the edge, putting tremendous pressure on the whole ecosystem. Friends, let me also tell you, particularly to my student friends, that because of these changes in natural resources, be it water, be it soil, be it air, or any other natural resource, when those resources are degraded, the poor people are worst sufferer. They suffer more because they depend more on these resources. A poor farmer depends more on the fertile soil of his or her field. A poor woman depends more on natural water resources for drinking, for bathing, or for all domestic consumption. And the irony of all this degradation is that these poor people, they do not contribute. They do not contribute to the degradation of these resources. But when the suffering comes, they are the worst sufferers. The rich people, who generally are the main culprits for degradation, they somehow manage with new technologies, with all other resources. But the poor people cannot, and they really suffer. Now, the question again, which I shall come back to our original one. So can we assume that the economic growth which we had, but that is destroying its environmental support, will continue and be sustainable? Economic growth I showed, and environmental degradation I also showed to you. So whether with a degraded environment, can economy continue growing? And I would certainly urge you to go. Of course, there are several very important, very good books, but this is one by Lester Brown on World on the Edge, How to Prevent Environmental and Economic Collapse in Near Future. And there, let me come to the third approach. So in the beginning, I talked to you about the economic and environmental approach in terms of priority, growth, crisis, and so on. Now come to the third approach, which is probably very important and sustainable, is the sustainability approach. In sustainability approach, the priority is not only economy or environment, but it is both economy as well as environment. Here, the growth is not maximizing, but be sustainable. Here, technology is not always good or not always bad, but it is good provided these are green technologies. Fertilizer is not go for either organic or inorganic. No, it said, let us go integrated. Economics, of course, not neoclassical or classical, but non-classical. Belief is heterodox, and they also feel that there could be crises, but the crisis will be in the system which we will be able to manage with technology and knowledge. Before I proceed, let me also tell, or let us clarify rather, that when we talk of sustainable development, we generally talk of integration of these three important parameters. In sustainable development, we talk of economic development, not only GDP or Sensex. We also talk of social development, which we call as equity, and then of course environmental protection, not only for our generation, but also for future generations, not only for human beings, but also for all creatures of this world. And therefore, we need to keep an eye on three indicators, not one indicator, not only economic indicator, not only food price, but also social indicator, hunger rates, and also political and failing states. And these indicators can give us a sense of how close to the edge our civilization may be. But friends, sustainability concept is also not a very foolproof concept. It has also got some kind of ambiguity. How? Sustainability is an inherently ambiguous term because it has got science as well as politics, but more importantly, as the earth is a very complex and dynamic system, you cannot have a permanent sustainable system. It is difficult to ascertain what is sustainable at any given time. Today's sustainable system will become unsustainable or may become unsustainable with changing needs and development. At one point of time, around 30, 40 years back, fertilizer application was considered to be a very sustainable system. But today we know that it is not going to be sustainable. That time of providing irrigation through canal or groundwater used to be considered as a very sustainable system, but it is not going to be a sustainable system because the scenario has changed. So therefore, the conflicts and confusions between science and policy on sustainability will continue. So we cannot have a full stop at any point of time. So keeping these things in mind, of course, now what the United Nations have formulated, calling it Sustainable Development Goals. As you know, there are 17 goals, 169 targets, 230 indicators, and of course, the target was by 2030. But because of COVID, probably many of these Sustainable Development Goals will not be met. These 2 years have really become very, very pathetic for the whole world. But our long-term goal of making Indian agriculture or global agriculture a profitable agriculture, of course, but also a green agriculture by increasing productivity and profitability, and also by reducing poverty and pollution. So these are the promises of a sustainable agriculture in India and also globally. Now to do that, what we should be doing? Of course, as the United Nations today says, reimagine, recreate, and restore. So manage and restore the ecosystems to reduce the environmental cost, enhance productivity, and improve sustainability. So when we are talking of sustainability and managing all these stresses, we talk of environment, economy, sustainability to enhance productivity and profitability. And that's how we do. So therefore, friends, in next 4 or 5 minutes, I would conclude it by showing what should be the way forward for ecosystem restoration. Just few points I would like to mention. One is we should go for green budgeting. We know economic budget. Every February, our honorable finance minister presents it, and there we calculate GDP growth and net income and so on. But probably we also need to prepare our green budget. What is green budget? Green budget means, for example, you are growing 1 hectare of rice crop and you are getting 5 tons per hectare yield, and you can calculate how much is the price of that one. But whenever you are growing that crop or when you are going for aquaculture or fisheries, besides harvesting the fish or crop, you are also doing lots of harms to the environment. You are polluting the water, you are polluting the soil, you are emitting greenhouse gases. So these are the negative things. So when we calculate the environmental cost, it is price due to the positive impacts, grain, fish, and so on, minus cost due to the negative impacts. And whatever we get, that net income plus minus environmental cost will be the green income. In many countries, of course, unofficially sometimes, besides developing this economic budget every year, they also calculate green budget, that to produce that much, to have that kind of GDP, how much was the harm we made to the environment and what is the cost of that one. So that becomes a green budget. For example, as I said, for growing rice or any other crop or even fisheries and aquaculture, we have got loss of nitrogen, emission of greenhouse gases, biocide residues, of course, groundwater depletion, having health impact. All these putting together will be having negative cost, but also it will be having some kind of ecosystem services. So when we put net income, then add or subtract the pollution cost, then it becomes which we call as green income. One very interesting analysis which we did, that if you see agriculture GDP, it has grown by around 4%, say during 1970 to 2010 and even 2020 also. Its environmental cost has been 7 to 10%. So the growth was 4%, environmental cost 7 to 10%, and the 50% of this environmental cost is going to have long-lasting impact. So you can take 4%. So the environmental cost has been 4%, growth has been 4%. So this 4% minus this 4%, it becomes 0. So if you include environmental cost, probably the growth in agriculture is not going to be 4%, it is going to be almost nil. This is number one, we must develop green budget. Second one is, of course, eco-regional agricultural planning, including aquaculture. We should not grow any crop anywhere. For example, this is a map which we prepared for rice. There are some areas which are suitable for growing rice. There are some areas which are moderately suitable, but there are areas which are not suitable, unsuitable. So we should not be growing rice in those areas, because if we grow rice there, we have to depend more and more on natural resources, exploiting natural resources, pumping of more water, applying more fertilizer, emitting more greenhouse gases and so on. But certainly science and technology should always be in the rescue. We must use emerging science and technologies, including all kinds of development, starting from drone to our varieties to automation and mechanization, efficient need-based input use, and of course integrated livestock as well as fisheries. This is the third important thing which we need to do. Then, as I said, fourth one is selecting the integrated approach, not only one, this way or that way. Of course, wherever possible, we should go for organic, but if there is not sufficient availability of manure and so on, we should also be going for integrated nutrient management. Similarly, integrated pest management, integrated crop management. Think in integration of the things, not totally stopping one from the other. Fifth one is, of course, reducing food loss. You will be surprised to know that around 1/3 of the food which we produce is lost. In India, it could be even more. And you can see these are not a very rare picture. This kind of food loss is a common picture in many places. So when you are going to lose this much, why should we produce? So reducing the food loss is another important one. Then, of course, choosing vegetarian food or fish. Fish, compared to many other animal proteins, have got less carbon footprint, less energy footprint, and also less water and nitrogen footprint. And of course, vegetarian food certainly have got, so probably our food habit can also save the environment. But of course, our tradition is respecting food, which is very, very important. Before wasting a food, we must think about this particular farmer and how much time, energy, resources, and devotion and respect this particular poor farmer has put into in producing that food. So when we go for wasting food, we must be respecting these things. Eighth one is, of course, choosing healthy and diverse food, which is very, very important. It is picking up nowadays, but only in a very small way. When you go for diverse kind of food, you really go for healthy diet and also better environment and also protecting biodiversity. Choosing local and seasonal food is another important one. That will not only be promoting the local production, local business, but also will be providing you a very healthy diet. And of course, the 10th and final one, if possible, you can also grow food at home so that you will not be going out and make some kind of destruction to the environment. Friends, in this particular endeavor, all of us have our roles, whether it is scientists, policymakers, farmers, consumers, societies, NGOs, students, all of us have our role to play in restoring environment. Let me conclude by showing this particular diagram, though it is a little philosophical, but hope you will agree to this. You know, all the developed countries of today, so this is the road of development of developing countries. All the developed countries of today, they were developing countries say around 40, 50 years back. May not be their economy was not like as such like our economy, but more or less it was same. But these developing countries, say all Europe or America, they became developed countries by exploiting science, natural resources, environment, and so on. But then after becoming developed country, today they also realized that their way of development is not sustainable development. So from this particular point, they want to go to this point, which is sustainable development. We are still here. We are still developing. So therefore, what we should try to do is not going from developing to become developed and then saying, no, it was wrong, let us go from here to here. Rather, we should be following this particular path. As you know, in the triangle, the length of this particular side is always less than the sum of these two other sides. So we should be following a different path for sustainable development of our country. What is this path? This is the path of low carbon, low water, low nitrogen, and low energy. But then why people do not follow it? It is not that only I know it, others do not know it. Probably many know it, but whenever we talk of low carbon, water, nitrogen, and energy, it also comes with low profit. And then that makes the stakeholder less interesting. So probably we really need to think. And therefore, friends, I conclude with the quote of this famous personality, father of our nation. Of course, you remember his quote that the nature has got everything to satisfy humans' need, our need, but not our greed. He also said one thing, that whenever a society, particularly a learned society, faces any kind of catastrophe, be it climate change, be it COVID, or even ecosystem destruction, that society has got only two choices. One is wait until the catastrophe fails us. Second one is act to fail the catastrophe. And of course, the choice is ours. And choice which will be made by our generation today will not only affect our own lives, but will also affect generations to come. With this, I conclude, my friends, that the conflicts of economy and environment will continue. We cannot put a full stop at this point of time, but nature is the timekeeper and to decide how long it will continue. It may say, now it is over, your time is up. Sustainability is the solution and needs scientific implementation, as I was trying to explain. Ecosystem restoration is, of course, the key for sustainability. Business as usual, therefore, is not going to work. It is a time for an alternate plan, and that should include reimagining, recreating, and restoring. So with this, once again, I thank each and every one of you for giving me this excellent opportunity of sharing some of my thoughts with all of you, and of course, meeting some of you online, digitally in the time of pandemic. My thanks to the director, my thanks to all the scientists, particularly my friend Murali, who approached me. So Murali, Satisha, and all of you, thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. It's indeed a pleasure of listening to your presentation. Even Murali sir was also saying about your experience and even the extempores you make. So it was really, we enjoyed the presentation. And of course, there are several information that we have to inculcate in our lifestyle for a better environment or for a sustainable future. Now, it's time, almost it is time. So I'll just brief a few points what we have been discussing. Like now, several like urea utilization, it's much higher than what we get it in return. And also the farming practice, what we have, like maybe rice production or paddy is much higher than maybe millets. So maybe millets are more sustainable than paddy. And what I also heard here that the pesticide usage, maybe paddy demands more than even the millets. But however, our basic practice is maybe based on the MSP or natural inclination towards paddy. So millets usage is much lower, even though it's a bit expensive compared to paddy or rice. So maybe some kind of policy changes may be required for this kind of shift. And one small example I want to give from aquaculture side, like carps, if we say like it's IMC, Indian major carps, or maybe some of the catfishes being cultured. But there are some minor carps, maybe weighing hardly like 50 or 100 grams, but they contain much more vitamins or even trace minerals, more than even the tablets what we consume. So if those fish species are identified and they are developed for aquaculture, of course it is more healthier. Maybe the profitability is less, but in turn the medical expenditures or other health associated issues what we face, that will be reduced. So as you said, the green energy or the environmental even like in our own expenditure will be reduced on other unknown or uncategorized sectors. So one just point I want to know, like organic or semi-organic farming, what we are advocating, how about maintaining the production demand? Because still India is having a high hunger index, though we are one of the leading exporters. So how to meet this gap and maintaining this environment, meeting the demand, and also the gap between supply and production, demand and production.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. And that's why we say integrated one. And that's why I said that we should not be fully depending on organic. Organic is good. We are certainly not against organic. We promote wherever it is possible, let us grow organic food. If manure, all other organic sources are available. But then where it is not available, we should be certainly going for the integrated use of fertilizer and also manure. Let me tell you, if we can use fertilizer in a judicious way, and there are several ways of doing it. If we do not misuse fertilizer, if we do not disuse fertilizer, then certainly the pollution is going to be very, very minimal. So it is not correct all the time say that the application of fertilizer is always bad. It is not. It is bad if we do not use it properly. It is bad if we do not apply it in a judicious way. But another point is organic is of course very good, but organic production also will be having some kind of environmental impact. It is not that organic has got no impact. Organic sources also will emit greenhouse gases. It will also have nitrogen losses and so on. So the approach should be wherever possible, go for organic, but where it is not possible, because we cannot compromise with the food demand. Food is the first and foremost thing to be provided. And therefore, integrated one is the one which we should be following.
Thank you, sir. So yeah, it's I think an apt reply. And now continuing this program, I think it's already we are crossing 11 o'clock. So I call Dr. Kumar Raja for presenting the vote of thanks.
So good morning, everyone. So I am privileged to propose vote of thanks on this World Environment Day. On behalf of the ICAR-CIBA and on my own behalf, I would like to thank our today's chief guest, Dr. Himanshu Pathak sir, Director, National Institute of Diabetic Stress Management, for taking his precious time out and consenting as a chief guest for this today's function. Sir, indeed, your words have inspired the audience how to maintain the trade-off between the economy and environment for the sustainable development. And your talk on the soil loss, nutrient use efficiency, and agriculture scenario, how it happened in the India from the baking bowl to export of food items to the world by the ICAR intervention. And I thank our respected director, Dr. K.P. Jitendran sir, for who graced us with his presence and guidance. Thank you, sir, for sharing your words on the improvement of ecosystem restoration by the responsible aquaculture. And we are fortunate to be guided by our in-charge environment section, Dr. Muralidhar sir, and he is always a constant support and encouragement for organizing such an event. And I would like to thank all the HODs and scientist in charges, my scientific colleagues and other staffs of ICAR-CIBA, as well as scholars who are attended the conference by the virtually. And I thank the AKMU officers and staffs for their arrangements made to conduct the function very smoothly without any hiccups. And I would like to thank all the participants across the India who is following virtually. And once again, I thank you one and all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Murli. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.